Good evening and welcome to our daily devotional reading. A special welcome to the members of our make-believe monastery. In other words, those subscribed and or commenting. I do appreciate your comments especially, and you might have noticed that I try to act as a priestess in a monastery would and respond where appropriate or required. That all being said, let's take one more deep breath together. And then we delve into Plato. Socrates speaking. There are many ways, Theodorus, in which the doctrine that every opinion of every man is true may be refuted. But there is more difficulty in proving that states of feeling, which are present to a man, and out of which arise sensations and opinions in accordance with them, are also untrue. And very likely I have been talking nonsense about them, for they may be unassailable, and those who say that there is clear evidence of them, and that they are matters of knowledge, may probably be right, in which case our friend Theaetetus was not so far from the mark when he identified perception and knowledge. And therefore let us draw nearer as the advocate of Protagoras' desires, and give the truth of the universal flux a ring. Is the theory sound or not? At any rate, no small war is waging about it, and there are combinations, not a few. Theodorus, no small war indeed, for in Iona the sect makes rapid strides. The disciples of Heraclitus are most energetic upholders of the doctrine. Socrates. Then we are the more bound, my dear Theodorus, to examine the question from the foundation as it is set forth by themselves. Certainly we are, Theodorus. Certainly we are. About these speculations of Heraclitus, which, as you say, are as old as Homer. Or even older still. The Thesians themselves, who profess to know them, are downright mad, and you cannot talk with them on the subject. For in accordance with their textbooks, they are always in motion. But as for dwelling upon an argument or a question, and quietly asking and answering in turn, they can no more do so than they can fly, or rather, the determination of these fellows not to have a particle of rest in them is more than the utmost powers of negation can express. If you ask any of them a question, he will produce, as from a quiver, sayings brief and dark, and shoot them at you. And if you inquire the reason of what he has said, you will be hit by some other new-fangled word, and will make no way with any of them, nor they with one another. Their great care is not to allow of any settled principle either in their arguments or in their minds, conceiving, as I imagine, that any such principle will be stationary. For they are at war with the stationary and do what they can to drive it out everywhere. Socrates, I suppose, Theodorus, that you have only seen them when they are fighting, and have never stayed with them in time of peace, for they are no friends of yours, and their peace doctrines are only communicated by them at leisure, as I imagine, to those disciples of theirs whom they want to make like themselves. Theodorus, disciples? My good sir, they have none. Men of their sort are not one another's disciples, but they grow up at their own sweet will, and get their inspiration anywhere, each of them saying of his neighbor that he knows nothing. From these men, then, as I was going to remark, you will never get a reason. Whether with their will or without their will, we must take the question out of their hands and make the analysis ourselves, as if we were doing a geometrical problem. Quite right too, but as touching the aforesaid problem, we have not heard from the ancients. Funny that he should refer to the ancients, who concealed their wisdom from the many in poetical figures, that Oceanus and Theaetetus, the origin of all things, are streams, and that nothing is at rest. And now the moderns, in their superior wisdom, have declared that the same openly, that the cobbler too may hear and learn of them, and no longer foolishly imagine that some things are at rest and others in motion. Having learned that all is motion, he will duly honor his teachers. I had almost forgotten the opposite doctrine, Theodorus. A lone being remains unmoved, which is the name for the all. This is the language of Parmenides, Melesus, and their followers, who stoutly maintain that all being is one and self-contained, and has no place in which to move. What shall we do, friend, with all these people? For advancing step by step, we have imperceptibly got between the combatants, the fighters, and unless we can protect our retreat, we shall pay the penalty of our rashness, like the players in the Palestrea who caught upon the line and are dragged different ways by two parties. Therefore, I think that we had better begin by considering those whom we first accosted, the river gods, and if we find any truth in them, we will help them to pull us over and try to get away from the others. But if the partisans of the whole appear to speak more truly, we will fly off from the party which would move the immovable to them. The party which would move the immovable. It's beautiful. And if I find that neither of them have anything reasonable to say, we shall be in a ridiculous position, having so great a conceit of our own pure opinion, and rejecting that of ancient and famous men. Having so great a conceit of our own poor opinion, and rejecting that of ancient and famous men. O Theodorus, do you think that there is any use in proceeding with the danger so great? Theodorus, nay, Socrates, Not to examine thoroughly what the two parties have to say would be quite intolerable. Socrates, then examine we must, since you who were so reluctant to begin are so eager to proceed. The nature of motion appears to be the question with which we begin. What do they mean when they say that all things are in motion? Is there only one kind of motion, or, as I rather incline to think, two? I should like to have your opinion upon this point in addition to my own, that I may err, if I must err, in your company. Tell me then, when a thing changes from one place to another, or goes round in the same place, is not that what is called motion? Yes. Socrates, here then we have one kind of motion. But when a thing remaining on the same spot grows old, or becomes black from being white, or hard from being soft, or undergoes any other change, may not this be properly called motion of another kind? I think so. Say rather that it must be so. Of motion then there are these two kinds, change and motion in place. Theodorus, you are right. Socrates, and now, having made this distinction, let us address ourselves to those who say that all is motion, and ask them whether all things according to them have the two kinds of motion, and are changed as well as move in place, or is one thing moved in both ways, and another in only one? Theodorus, indeed I do not know what to answer, but I think they would say that all things are moved in both ways. Socrates, yes, my friend. For if not, they would have to say that the same things are in motion and at rest, and there would be no more truth. In saying that all things are in motion, than that all things are at rest, to be sure. And if they are to be in motion, and nothing is to be devoid of motion, all things must always have every sort of motion. Most true. Socrates, consider a further point. Did we not understand them to explain the generation of heat, whiteness, or anything else in some such manner as the following? Were they not saying that each of them is moving between the agent and the patient, so the actor and that which is acted upon, together with a perception, and that the patient, that which is acted upon or perceived, ceases to be a perceiving power and becomes a percipient, and the agent a quale instead of a quality? I'm quite sure it's not a qualia. I suspect that quality may appear a strange and uncouth term to you, and that you do not understand the abstract expression. I don't. Then I will take concrete instances. I mean to say that the producing power or agent becomes neither heat nor whiteness, but hot and white, and the like of other things. For I must repeat what I said before, that neither the agent nor the patient have any absolute existence. But when they come together and generate sensations and their objects, the one becomes a thing of a certain quality and the other a percipient. You remember? Of course. We may leave the details of their theory unexamined, But we must not forget to ask them the only question with which we are concerned. Are all things in motion and flux? Yes, they will reply. And they are moved in both those ways which we distinguished. That is to say, they move in place and are also changed. Of course, if the motion is to be perfect. Socrates, if they only moved in place and were not changed, we would be able to say that what in the nature of the things which are in motion and flux. If they only moved in place and were not changed, we should be able to say what is the nature of the things which are in motion and flux. Theodorus, exactly, Socrates. But now, since not even the white continues to flow white, and whiteness itself is a flux of change, which is passing into another color, and is never to be caught standing still, can the name of any color be rightly used at all? Theodorus. How is that possible, Socrates, either in the case of this or of any other quality, if while we are using the word, the object is escaping in the flux? Socrates. And what would you say of perceptions such as sight and hearing, or any other kind of perception? Is there any stopping in the act of seeing and hearing? Theodorus, certainly not, if all things are in motion. Socrates. Then we must not speak of seeing any more than of not seeing. Then we must not speak of seeing any more than of non-seeing, nor of any other perception more than any non-perception, if all things partake of every kind of motion. Theodorus, certainly not. Socrates, yet perception is knowledge, so at least Theaetetus and I were saying. Theodorus, very true. Thus far our scripture of the evening. Do not let us think you can go to West. I cannot read my own handwriting. That will then forever be forgotten. When Socrates speaks of these Ionians, it almost sounds like a Gnostic sect that he's referring to. No disciples, no teachers, just everyone having their own opinion. And so I was thinking, what would be grand is in the search of truth. If one could maybe combine the two, because the Gnostics worked a lot on revelation. If one could combine the truth, revelation and then analysis, that would be swell. Later, Socrates says to Theodorus, that I may err, if I must err, but then in your company, so that you can correct me. I think I'm adding that part. Oh, I just forgot to write it down. That I may err, if I must err, which being human, I must, but then in your company, so that I may stand corrected. I think that is kind of the ideal. Of course, Simone Weil is at the forefront of my mind. I finished the collection that Joe Foley prescribed. I loved it. And two things popped out while I was reading. People need poetry. People need stories, and beautifully told stories. That seems to be missing. Although I don't know, maybe it is not, but I think the poetic part is a bit missing. In order to survive, for their souls to survive. And finally, we see that Plato comes in with Parmenides, and he brings both sides, becoming and being, into play. And it's beautifully played with in this dialogue. I really do love this dialogue. I think it might be my favorite. You will probably hear me say that again of others, but thus far it's my favorite of the ones that we've been reading together. It's beautifully said how it's like, it's so dangerous. It's like stepping in the middle of this war between the two opposing views and trying to make sense of it all. And yet the brave Plato does. And he became Plato thus. The other thing that I wrote down was also connected to Simone Weil. Her piece on contradiction. I don't have the book with me now. The piece on contradiction made me cry. It's a different kind of cry. I read it this morning. It's a different kind of cry than with Susan Wolf. Susan Wolf was a cry from frustration, like putting so much burden on such a heavy burden on people, on humanity. The children of Sophia. In which she delighted according to the Bible in the beginning. This was a kind of cry of recognition and being recognized in a way, of seeing yourself in someone else's words. And I also had to think of space and time, with change and place. So time and actual, that is what changes in a way. And space, place, that's in the words. But speaking of veil, so dearest members of our make-believe monastery, I do have to inform you that tomorrow there will be no daily devotional reading, no communal daily devotional reading. You are more than welcome to do your daily devotional reading on your own. But I, your priestess, must be traveling. I am going on a pilgrimage to Paris, a one-day pilgrimage. If I do in the future go on longer pilgrimages, I will take what needs to be taken with me. But I'll be in the train most of the day. Well, 8 hours in the train, 8 hours in Paris. A little less in the train, but yeah. and I will be reading. Of course, it's my birthday trip, so one cannot... Oh no, you can't see the name because it's white. Oh, maybe. Oh, there. One cannot go with a birthday without reading about the trouble with being born. I was planning initially to take only this, but I see it's aphorisms. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So it will be a bit of a tiring read the whole day. Plus, I fell in love with her work. So I'm taking this book. A lot of the essays in this book was also in the collection that we read, so I'm going to just reread them, though. I did notice that Folly didn't really choose anything from Gravity and Grace. This is the more woo-hoo Vale. I imagine he's not as comfortable in this part of her as I am. Like, I'm like, this is me. Never mind my cup of tea. So I'll be taking her, and then just for the hell, because I've got this on my shelf, and who knows, maybe I feel like reading it. Just a little. This will be the only one. Like, if I only read one of these books, especially this one, is quite light, I would probably have been able to finish it in one day. But I'll probably read like a couple of pages of Emil. I can't pronounce his surname. And Quran? Probably not. And then one essay of Vale, and then some aphorisms, and then Vale, and this I'll probably read in that cafe. So I am going on a pilgrimage to expand my mind for your sake. So please pardon my absence tomorrow. I trust that you will have a good day. And may the spirit of Sophia be with you.